another relaxing video. Today we're going to dive a bit deeper into Last Epoch's mechanics. Specifically, we're going to see how crafting works. But first, don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see more relaxing ASMR gaming content. And now, let's get started. You know how in action RPGs, it's all about that thrill of the hunt for epic loot. But let's face it, the randomness can be a pain. Especially when you reach the mid to late game, when finding the right upgrade is more and more difficult. That's where a crafting system steps in, lowering the player's frustration. Last Epoch has given its own interpretation to the crafting system, or forging as they call it. And in my view, it has done it right. The whole system has some straightforward elements that are very beginners friendly, but on the other hand, has got depth that all the pros and experts will enjoy as well. First of all, each piece of gear that is not a unique, a legendary, or a set item has got a forging potential, meaning you can modify the item using the forge. Each time you do that, it consumes some of the potential until it reaches zero. At that point, the item cannot be modified any further. How exactly does it work? First of all, the tools needed are shards, glyphs, and runes. Let's talk about shards first. Shards are the fragments that embody the various affixes on your gear. Things like health, fire resistance, cold resistance, crit chance, etc. There's a wide variety of them, matching nearly every affix in the game. Where do you find them? Mostly by killing monsters, but they can also be the reward of an endgame echo, or they can drop from a chest or a shrine. To forge, simply open the forging menu pressing the F key, then place the item into the slot to begin the upgrade process. With the right shards, select an affix on your item to enhance it. Clicking on it increases its tier and consequently its power. You can repeat this process until you either run out of shards, the item has consumed all its forging potential, or the affix hits tier 5, the maximum tier that can be forged. Remember, the highest affix tiers, 6 and 7, can only roll on exalted or experimental items. Besides, these are the only items that can be combined with a unique to form a legendary. I'll go over legendary forging later. The forging process itself is pretty user-friendly. You keep enhancing your chosen affix until no further improvements can be made. Also, there is a small chance you can roll a critical success when forging. When it happens, the affix is improved by 2 levels in one go. Plus the shard and the forging potential are preserved. Very nice indeed. Last Epoch's fortune system is layered, offering depth beyond its initial simplicity, making it arguably one of the best of all action RPGs. I read comments that possibly Torchlight Infinite crafting system is the best, with Last Epoch's being a close second. I can't confirm that though, since I did not try the latest iteration of the Torchlight series. Anyway, let's have a look at the glyphs now. There are 5 different glyphs, specifically the glyph of chaos, hope, despair, insight, and order. They all serve different purposes and allow you to modify or somewhat control the outcome of a forging action. The glyph of hope is the one I use the most. It offers a 25% chance to conserve forging potential, allowing for more modification to an item. Then there's the glyph of chaos, which changes an affix to a different one upon upgrade. So let's say you are upgrading a cold resistance. If you add this glyph, there's a chance that after it has been upgraded, it is changed into something else, compatible with the item that you have. A good use of this glyph is to change an affix you don't need. The glyph of despair, instead, is a wicked one. It has the ability to seal an affix and free up its slot. This means that the item in question, for example a rare with 4 affixes, becomes one with 3 affixes and 1 sealed affix. At that point you can use a rune to add a new random affix, and now you have a rare item with 5 affixes, maybe all nicely rolled and all perfect for your build. How good is that? Note that the sealed affix cannot be upgraded any further. The glyph of insight is peculiar. It can turn a prefix into an experimental affix, but only works for gloves, boots, and belts. Experimental affixes are rather unusual, and they are often a combination of 2 affixes, but with lower rolls. They are very situational, let's put it that way, but they can find their use. Also, this is the only glyph that cannot drop, but instead is generated when using its corresponding rune. More on that later. Lastly, the glyph of order ensures an affix doesn't reroll within its tier when upgraded, maintaining the quality of its roll. Let's explain it with an example. Let's say you're upgrading a cold resistance that currently has a tier 3 value of 21%, which is the highest value it can roll for in that tier. Upgrading with a glyph of order will make the affix roll its highest tier 4 value. That for the cold resistance would be 29%. So the resistance was a top roll in the tier 3, and it has maintained that status also when it was upgraded to tier 4. Pretty neat, I'd say. Let's now focus on runes. Their role is to change the items themselves, not the outcome of the forging action, like the glyphs. Some of them behave like the various orbs in Path of Exile, so they might sound familiar if you play that game. we have 8 types of runes. The rune of shattering, of discovery, of ascendance, of refinement, of creation, of removal, of shaping, and of research. Let's quickly go through each one of them. The rune of shattering simply destroys an item, but grants a random number of shards corresponding to its affixes. This is useful to gain some rare affixes, if overall you don't need that specific item. The rune of discovery adds a random tier 1 affix to an empty slot. This is useful for adding a missing affix, maybe after a Glyph of Despair has sealed one away. Sounds familiar? The rune of Ascendance is rather straightforward. In fact, transforms an item into a set or unique item of the same type. The rune of Refinement rerolls all affixes values within their range. This can be a gamble, but with poor affix values, it might be worth the risk. The rune of Creation simply duplicates an item, but the forging potential of both the original and the copy is reduced to 0. So there is a system to dupe items, but with a high cost attached to it. Then we have the rune of Removal, that removes a random affix and returns a certain amount of shards. There's an element of chance here, as it could remove either a favorable or unfavorable affix, but it could be worth the risk. The rune of Shaping rerolls the implicit values of an item. Just to be clear, the implicit values are the stats you see at the very top of the item window, just below its name. And finally, we have the rune of Research. It works like the Glyph of Despair, but for experimental affixes, sealing them to open a slot. There's a chance to also receive a Glyph of Insight. The peculiarity of this rune is that it can only drop from exiled mages that you frequently encounter in an area, trapped in their cages. But overall, their drop rate is low. The crafting layers in Last Epoch, introduced by runes and glyphs, offer a rich variety of strategic options throughout the game. Personally, I find the forging system extremely helpful. It's a boon during leveling for that much needed resistance boost, and it truly shines in the endgame, where the depth of glyphs and runes can be fully explored. Although the system isn't deterministic, a sticking point for some, it enhances the quintessential ARPG thrill of unexpected discoveries. Last Epoch's crafting strikes a balance, granting players some control to mitigate the randomness of loot drops and maintain engagement, especially during periods of bad luck. This system encourages an active participation in the world, urging players to collect materials and refine their gear. It opens up the chance to transform a decent item into an exceptional one, achieving outcomes that pure chance might never provide. I have to spend some final words now talking about legendary forging. I mentioned it earlier, and it is indeed a different kind of beast. This process is distinct and requires a unique item with legendary potential to be combined with an exalted or experimental item of the same type. Remember, only exalted and experimental items can possess the coveted tier 6 or 7 affixes. A unique with legendary potential means that the unique can take one or two of those high-level affixes and merge them with its own. Not all uniques roll with that potential though. It is somewhat rare to find. Suppose you have a nice unique belt with legendary potential. Now you drop an exalted belt with 2 tier 7 affixes that are exactly what your build needs. How do you forge a legendary? Easy. You run through a dungeon. Yes, the developers wanted to make a legendary forging something you have to earn. The dungeon in question is called the Temporal Sanctum. Upon conquering it, you enter the archives, where you take the 2 items and put them in the Eternity Cache. And then what? You wait. Sort of. Now the whole Temporal Sanctum is built upon a mechanic that lets you instantly move back and forward in time to find your way through it. So they use this mechanic also for the forging, which is rather clever and respects the lore if you want. You deposit the items in the past, then you move forward in time by some millennia, and voila, you find that the 2 items have merged together to form a legendary. There's been feedback by players complaining about the necessity of dungeon runs for each legendary forging attempt. But it's not like you're forging a legendary every 10 minutes. Plus, the system prevents the trivialization of legendary items. Preserving their status is a significant achievement. While some may find this process daunting, it ensures that legendary forging remains a meaningful and rewarding endeavor. The developers stand by this choice, emphasizing the importance of earning your legendary gear, and I agree with them. Besides, they also have introduced Weaver's Uniques that provide a more accessible route to lower tier legendary items. I'll talk about them in another video if you're interested. This concludes my deep dive into Last Epoch's crafting system. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to cover more Last Epoch's mechanics. And remember, you can check my other relaxing ASMR gaming videos. Links should be on the screen and in the description. Until next time, take care and stay relaxed. Bye bye.